This is NBC News special coverage of the first presidential debate between former President Trump.
Look, we've had a terrible economy.
And Vice President Kamala Harris.
What we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess.
The two candidates meeting in person for the first time ever.
So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back.
I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country.
A historic face-off.
What she says is an absolute lie.
You're going to hear from the same old tired playbook.
The former president battling to win back the White House.
I had no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country.
The vice president running to be the nation's first female president.
It's insulting to the women of America.
Each arguing the other is unfit to lead the country.
Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window.
It is the biggest event yet of the 2024 election.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people.
And it could determine who wins the White House in November.
People want to take their country back.
I think the choice is clear in this election.
Reporting tonight from the spin room at the presidential debate in Philadelphia, Tom Llamas. And from NBC News Studios in New York, Hallie Jackson.
Hey, good evening. I'm Tom Llamas. Hallie will be joining us in just a moment as you're watching NBC News Now's live coverage of what could be the most consequential night of the 2024 presidential election. You see right there the historic handshake between Vice President Kamala Harris, here it is, and former President Trump. This is actually the first time the two of them ever met, not just on a debate stage, but in person, period. And tempers ran hot tonight with personal attacks just minutes into the hour-and-a-half-long debate. Both sides trying to play to their strengths, like Vice President Harris hammering Mr. Trump on reproductive rights, his defense of Supreme Court justices who overturned Roe v. Wade, and what she called lies about abortion.
Nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America.
The former president preferring to talk more about immigration, pushing debunked claims about Haitian migrants in Ohio, and accusing the vice president of allowing undocumented immigrants into the country.
And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
Fact-checking also becoming a big part of the night, with the moderators stepping in to correct the record repeatedly, including one instance when the former president refused to back down from the false claim that he won the 2020 election.
In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I said that sarcastically. You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof.
Let's get right to my NBC News colleagues, Peter Alexander and Garrett Hake, out there in the spin room. Peter covers the Harris campaign, Garrett, the Trump campaign. And Garrett, I want to start with you. Tell me what you're hearing from inside the Trump campaign.
Inside the Trump campaign, they're very confident in how he performed tonight. They think this foreign policy segment was the strongest part of his performance tonight. If you go one layer out, though, the Republicans who advised this campaign, who are rooting for this campaign, they are frustrated. I've been talking to the Republican operatives, including some folks who are involved in the debate preparation for this president, who don't feel like he took advantage of the opportunities that were presented to him. Now, granted, some of them were frustrated about the moderators. They were frustrated about the topics. They're frustrated that Kamala Harris, for example, didn't get asked a direct question about inflation, an issue that they think is one of their strongest issues. But they realized that their guy didn't take advantage of what he was trying to do. All day I was talking to these Trump folks who told me they wanted to make Kamala Harris own the most liberal past positions that she's taken. And And really only on the issue of fracking do they feel like they were successful. They just wasn't able to tie her to the things they felt like they needed to tie her to have a clear win tonight.
Are you getting the sense, because I'm getting the sense from the Republicans I'm talking to, it was a shift change when you compare it to the Atlanta debate. Coming out of the Atlanta debate, I mean, they were victorious, they were happy, they were congratulating each other. Here it's much different. There's frustration, there's anger, they're blaming moderators. And I think you're right, with that outside layer, they're frustrated a little bit with former president. Has the former president spoken out yet? Has he posted yet anything on Truth Social?
He's posted two things. One, suggesting that it was a strong debate performance because it was 3-on-1, so his own complaint about the moderators. I expect we'll hear more of that. And he posted a meme of him with AI-generated cats, a nod to that line where he was arguing with the moderator about immigrants eating pets, which I think, you know, just as my own view, feels like somebody who's much more online than millions of viewers here tonight who are probably going to have no idea what he's even referencing. Right. I think that is not the turf that a campaign that wants to be fighting for the middle of the country perhaps wants to be fighting.
We should mention Senator J.D. Vance, the running mate, is somewhere here in the spin room. He's gaggling with reporters. We'll bring you that sound as soon as we have it. I do want to ask you about that moment, though, when the moderators asked former President Trump about something J.D. Vance had said about vetoing a national abortion bill. Talk to me about that moment, because it seemed like the ticket wasn't on the same page.
No, this is really striking. I mean, Donald Trump has had over the course of his career every conceivable position on abortion. Where he has landed now is that he believes it's an issue for the states, and he has used that to avoid taking direct questions about what, if any, federal policy he would take. He has not answered directly about whether he would veto a national abortion ban. But when J.D. Vance was on Meet the Press, I guess 2 weeks ago now, Kristen Welker asked him about this, and he kind of took Trump's position to what a lot of people thought was the logical conclusion. If he doesn't support a ban, yes, I suppose he would veto it. Trump wouldn't go that far tonight. And, Tom, that's the second time I can think of off the top of my head where Trump has distanced himself from a sort of Vance projection of a Trump position. Now on abortion, also on the child tax credit, where Vance has proposed a much more generous expansion of the child tax credit than Trump has. When you and your, ticket mate are not on the same page, that is a problem for a ticket. If J.D. Vance can't credibly speak for Donald Trump, what's he out there talking about?
Right. Garrett Hake, stand by for us. I know when you have new reporting, we'll come back to you during this broadcast. I want to go to my friend Peter Alexander, who's out there in the middle of the spin room somewhere. Peter, give me a sense of what's happening inside the Harris-Walz campaign right now, what they're telling you.
Yeah, Tom, let's walk through a series of items that have been breaking and developing as you two have been speaking right now. We'll start in order. First, we've heard from the communications director from Kamala Harris, a man by the name of Brian Fallon, who immediately after this debate wrapped up, posted on social media, "That was fun. Let's do it again in October." Clearly a message being sent by the Harris campaign for the first time publicly that they would like there to be a second Harris-Trump debate. We're waiting for any response from the Trump campaign. We'll try to bring that to you as soon as we hear about it. Separately, we are hearing from a senior Harris campaign official who is describing this, in their words, as just a plethora of, how do they say it specifically? They said basically that they had more to work with than they could have possibly imagined, that they had so much that they were hoping to amplify over the course of this night, and most notably, they focus on the topic of abortion. Specifically, it's on that issue where, according to the Harris campaign's dial groups, they say they saw a dramatic gap, one of the biggest gaps they've ever seen, particularly from the voters, women in particular, who were focused on this, saying that they were satisfied, pleased, and supportive of the words they heard from Kamala Harris. It's a message you're going to hear going forward. And then most notably, and perhaps most importantly in terms of the potential influence it will have on those young voters and other voters, Taylor Swift, with 283 million followers on her Instagram account, within the last 5 minutes, has just publicly come out in favor of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, saying that she will be voting for them. She said she came to this conclusion after she saw that there was an AI, an artificial intelligence, false account that suggested she would be supporting Donald Trump. And she said the best way to be transparent about her views was to make it very clear publicly where she stood on this issue. She says, "I will be casting my vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in the 2024 presidential election. I'm voting for Kamala Harris," she added, "because she fights for the rights and causes I believe need a warrior to champion them. Just to put that in some context here, remember only a matter of months ago when Joe Biden was the presidential nominee for the Democrats, there was a real concern among Democrats that they weren't getting the support within the young voter community, those first-time voters in many cases, that they weren't energized by a man who was already 81 and would be 86 at the end of a second term if he was to serve. Obviously, Kamala Harris tonight, as you heard, casting herself as a generational candidate. They feel strongly, and certainly with this endorsement from Taylor Swift tonight, that sends a very clear message, first from the debate and separately from her social media, about the value that young people may find in a Harris presidency going forward. And finally, I'll just tell you, based on the takeaways I've had speaking to analysts in this room and hearing from Democrats and Republicans alike, one of the things that frustrated Republicans, frankly, and satisfied a lot of Democrats, Tom, was the sense that Kamala Harris, though she didn't answer some questions, which is receiving some criticism, she did not say, which perhaps was stunning to critics, that America is better off now than it was 4 years ago. They do believe she succeeded in making this a referendum not so much about the Biden-Harris administration, but about Donald Trump himself. It's one place that we're hearing from a lot of Democrats so far tonight. Back to you.
I'm hearing that as well. Before you go, Peter, I do want to ask you, can you get a sense yet if there will be a second debate, if Democrats will even want that, or is it one and done?
Yeah, Tom, no, just to the first point I was making, Brian Fallon, of course, the communications director, as we just indicated, he came out publicly immediately after this. He said, that was fun. Let's do it again in October. He is the communications director for the Harris campaign. So it appears pretty clear that their message is, we're glad to do this again. We're waiting for any reaction from the Trump campaign. They had said in the past, he had said publicly, anytime, anywhere. That was focused on a Joe Biden debate. He has said publicly that he'd be glad to do other debates as well. He was pushing for a Fox News debate. But again, to be clear, at least to the best of my reporting right now, and I defer to colleagues if they've heard anything in the last 3 minutes, we have not yet heard from the Trump campaign in response to that.
All right, Peter Alexander, we appreciate all your reporting. Joining our special coverage now is Republican Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas in the spin room here as a surrogate for the Trump campaign. Senator Cotton, thank you so much for joining us. Your thoughts first coming out of this debate.
Well, I thought this was a very good debate for President Trump. It laid out a clear contrast between not empty promises or slogans or predictions about what these candidates would do, but their clear records. It's a very unusual presidential election. President Trump has been in office before, first time in 100 years it's happened. We know what what kind of president President Trump would be. He brought peace, prosperity, and stability around the world. Under Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, we have record high inflation, wages are stagnant, the border is wide open, and we've had war and conflict all around the world. So no matter what you heard from Kamala Harris tonight, there's a clear record here to compare with President Trump's record.
And former President Trump said that. The problem was it was in the last 2 minutes of this debate. Do you think the vice president was successful in making this debate about Donald Trump and not about Biden-Harris?
No, I think she was successful in hiding her own liberal record to the best of her ability. President Trump did a good job of calling it out, though, not only in his closing statement, but throughout the debate, pointing out, for instance, that she does, in fact, support a ban on fracking. She supports a ban on gas-powered cars. She does want to confiscate private firearms. She wants to decriminalize illegal immigration. And as we just learned this week, she wants to use taxpayer dollars to pay for gender transition surgery for illegal immigrants in detention centers in America. Those are all records she's taken, not as a young woman in college or in a TV interview, kind of in a live setting where people could put a foot wrong, as you know, Tom. Those are her considered, deliberate positions that she took when she was running for president in her own right, or when she was serving the United States Senator.
And she said that she's, changed on some of those positions. Well, they're saying evolved, and you guys say flip-flop. I get it, but I just want to go on the record and say that she's changed on some of those positions.
Actually, no. I don't say she's flip-flopped. Yeah. She's lying. Yeah. Bernie Sanders on your network said this weekend that she hasn't changed her positions. She's saying what she thinks she needs to get elected.
Right, that she's still a progressive. I do want to ask you, why do you think Republicans, at least the ones that I'm talking to that are strategist voters, were frustrated with this debate? It was a much different vibe coming out of that Atlanta debate. What was different about this one? Why are you guys frustrated? A lot of you.
Come on, the Atlanta debate was historic. I mean, President Trump ended his opponent's presidential campaign. I don't think you could expect that to happen again.
Right. But I think there's real frustration with some Republicans.
He did a great job tonight. I thought in some ways it was 3-on-1. on, all the fact checks that President Trump got, and they never fact checked Kamala Harris. She claimed that she doesn't support abortion in months 7, 8, or even 9 of a pregnancy, when in fact she voted to do that in the U.S. Senate. They didn't put.
I got to say, but if you're going to be commander-in-chief, you know this. You can stand up to 2 journalists, right? I mean, even though you guys may have thought that moderators weren't fair.
And he did. I thought he did a good job in what was, in effect, a 3-on-1 debate. But Kamala Harris.
You think she was better prepared?
No, not at all. Because you can't. I mean, how can you be prepared to defend a ban on fracking, especially in Pennsylvania, to defend a ban on the sale of new gas-powered cars? These are her positions. This is what she supported as vice president and as a senator and as a soft-on-crime attorney general.
Before we go, do you think there's another presidential debate?
I don't know. I mean, President Trump proposed several other debates. Kamala Harris refused to take him up on it. I think if we had another debate, you'd see more of what you saw tonight, which is a clear contrast in these records. But I'll leave that to President Trump.
We spoke to a bunch of undecided voters that were watching this debate. They say after this debate, they're still undecided. So we'll have to wait and see. We have another debate. Senator, we thank you for your time. We appreciate that. I want to send it back to Hallie Jackson in New York, who's going to pick up some of our coverage right now.
Tom Llamas there in the very busy, very active spin room. Tom, thank you very much. Let me bring it back to the folks here at the table for us. Moderator of Meet the Press, Kristen Welker, our national political reporter, and big board icon Steve Kornacki. Our chief political analyst, Chuck Todd, is with us as well. Kristen, let me go to you. You've heard now from the folks that Tom is talking to, from our reporters on the ground there. We've seen that Taylor Swift endorsement. Give us a sense of what things look like tomorrow morning, right? We're going to wake up. There's going to be a news cycle that unfolds. What does that look like?
Look, I think that Vice President Kamala Harris is going to feel emboldened after tonight. We've reported a lot about all of her preparations, her strategy to get under former President Trump's skin. She clearly did that on a range of issues, on abortion, January 6th, his crowd sizes. She brought up John McCain at the end. At the same time, while you have Trump allies saying, look, he was on the defensive way too much tonight. You also have some Harris allies saying she needs to now flesh out her economic proposals and answer that question that was left unanswered at the top of the debate about why people should feel better now than they did 4 years ago, and what she's going to do in the future to make people feel better about the high price of groceries, for example, how she's going to bring that down. You did hear her lay out some of her policies. I don't want to say that she didn't at all, but that is the number one issue for voters. Right now, Trump beats her. She's catching up to him on that issue, but her allies believe she should be hammering those points over and over again, that basically today and this evening and the debate was the start to what now she should take the momentum and move forward.
Okay, so Kristen, you're talking economy. Chuck, let me come to you because reproductive rights is an issue where Kamala Harris sees a political vulnerability and a potential liability with Donald Trump here. That came up tonight. It is an issue where she outpolls him. I'm curious how you see that framing, considering that is something that campaign officials, as you heard from the conversation just a moment ago, on the Harris side, see as one of her strongest moments. And I got to tell you, Chuck, on this issue of sort of baiting, well, let me start there. Let me start on reproductive rights, and I'll come back to you on something else.
Okay, well, let me just stick to that issue for a second. Here's all I kept thinking about when she was talking very specifically about a woman sitting in the parking lot, potentially bleeding out because she wasn't going to get care because there was concern about the law. You know who wouldn't have made that rebuttal on that issue? Joe Biden. And it was so striking to me. Joe Biden could barely talk about the issue. It was really one of the biggest weaknesses of the campaign he was running, is his inability, whatever it is, his own, I think he was caught up in his own political positions, his own religious beliefs on this. Frankly, 40 years of talking about abortion one way, and then suddenly the conversation had changed and he didn't really evolve or modernize with it. That is what sort of struck me. Like, here was an issue that is suddenly, I think the contrast is much clearer between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump than it was between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Everything else, you wouldn't have had that kind of clear contrast. But on that issue, more than any other, that was something you never would have seen from Joe Biden, no matter which version of Joe Biden you got, 2016, 2020, or the one we saw last June.
I'm going to call a quick timeout for just a second, because as we all know, spin rooms move fast, things go quickly. I know that somebody has just sat down, I think, next to Tom back in Philadelphia. So, Tom, let me turn it over to you for just a second, and then we'll come back and chat.
All right, Hallie, thank you for that. Yeah, joining us now, California Governor Gavin Newsom, a surrogate, of course, for the Harris-Walz team. So, Governor, your thoughts on this debate coming out of it?
I mean, if this was a prize fight, they would have done a TKO against Trump in the second round. It was an extraordinary performance from the get-go. She had the decency to go up and shake his hand, introduce herself as Kamala Harris, and she commanded the stage from the moment that debate began. I thought she did an exceptional job.
Let's talk about debate strategy, because she made the debate about Donald Trump, not about the Biden-Harris administration. Why was that a positive?
Well, I thought she not only made the case against Donald Trump, she also prosecuted the case for the future. She kept looking in the camera, talking about you, talking about me, talking about the issues that matter to the American people, on affordability, on housing, on child care. She was consistent in painting not only a picture of the current administration in the context of the accomplishments of Biden-Harris, but the pivot to a framework of a compelling future about the next 4 years, with end of the day is what this election is all about.
Right, but she was so, discipline's the word. Every time she was asked a question, she'd almost answer it first about Trump and then maybe go into her response. And if you were looking for policy, you didn't get a whole lot of policy, to be quite fair. I mean, you got some of it towards the second hour, but this was a lot about the Trump administration.
Well, you got contrast. I mean, Chuck was absolutely right. It wasn't a criticism Chuck, I think, was making about President Biden on their issue of abortion. It was a compliment to Vice President Harris, her ability to bring you into the story, to tell a story, to humanize an issue. She did it across the spectrum of issues. He was on the defensive from day one. She won the debate. If the purpose tonight was to win the debate, to show she's a commander-in-chief, to show she has character and temperance, to show that she can take on a bully like Donald Trump and put him on the defense so she can take on the dictators around the rest of the globe and lead this nation, I think she did it. And she also did this. She talked about all of us, not just some of us. I thought the best parts of the debate were at the end, when she was talking about the issues of race and talking about moving away from divisiveness and talking down to people and past people, and the fact that we're all in this together and we're all better off and we're all better off. It was a fantastic night.
Do you think there's another debate? If you were advising the Harris campaign, would you say that? Would you tell them to have another debate, October. Or do you think it's one and done? You think that you?
Well, absolutely. We talked about a couple debates. He said anytime, anywhere, tough guy. Anytime, anywhere. By the way, that was weakness. Weakness, not even masquerading as a strength. I usually compliment him. Weakness masquerading as strength. He was weak across the board. I would love to see a debate.
You think it'd be good for the Harris campaign? It'd obviously be good for the American people, but you think it'd be good for Harris?
But what you just said, I don't want to be flippant about that. Good for the American people, good for democracy, good for freedom, good for the rule of law, good for not only this country, but the world we're trying to build. Absolutely good for Kamala Harris.
Do you think the Democratic Party and her handlers, her campaign, maybe loosen the reins a little bit, in the sense that maybe she does town halls where she's actually talking to voters? Maybe she does some more sit-down interviews. Yeah. I mean, were Democrats nervous about her, and now has she set the expectations?
Well, maybe somewhere, not me.
Yeah.
That's a comment. See, forgive me, that's a reveal to the extent people are surprised of something we've known about for decades in California. I've watched that Kamala Harris for years and years and years. So in so many ways, past was reflected in the present. And the good news, I know this about her, she keeps getting better and better and better. So to your question about getting out there even more, absolutely, you're going to see it. And I'm absolutely confident she'll provide more opportunities in that respect as well.
You know a lot about politics. How impactful, or will it not matter at all, is the Taylor Swift endorsement tonight?
No, I mean, very significant. For no other reason, there's an energy and pride that comes with that. There's an energy of youth, a quality of imagination. Trust me, it's reflected in my 4 children, all of them under the age of 14. They seem to know more about everything going on in Taylor Swift's life than anything else. I guarantee it. Within the next 24 hours, they're less likely to be talking about this interview, respectfully, with us, with their dad, and more about Taylor Swift's endorsement. So, in the way she did it, around this cat lady thing and the pejoratives and the way women have been treated in this country, that, I think, also is profoundly significant.
California Governor Gavin Newsom. Governor, we thank you for your time. Hallie, you can kind of see and feel the vibe there from the California governor of how the Democrats feel tonight after this debate.
I mean, he's happy.
Yeah, to say the least. Yeah.
I watched that interview, Tom. I'm texting with folks in and around the Democratic orbit. Obviously, they are nearly jubilant from that, although I think people understand there's still a long way to go before Election Day. Let me bring back Chuck, Kristen, and Steve Kornacki here. Kornacki, let me get to you, because the macro question, the meta question, do debates matter? Do they move the needle? In a race this close, and we've been saying it, competitive as heck right now, how does this play out with the electorate?
Yeah, see, and this is what I find myself thinking about here. You see how jazzed Democrats are right now. You certainly some things tonight I think Trump's going to take some heat for in the coming days. I want to see what the polls look like just in terms of who won the debate, but I am reminded that in 4 of his previous general election debates, Donald Trump was clobbered in the public opinion polls after those debates. I'm just looking here. These are some of the post-debate margins. He lost by 35 points the first debate in one of the polls in 2016, 23 points. 21 points, 25 points to Joe Biden in the first debate in 2020. And you look at those 2016 numbers, and of course you remember that he won the election. You remember one of the dynamics of that election was he'd have those moments where he would take a hit in the polls. Access Hollywood is one of the ultimate examples here, and it would take about a week's time for everything to cycle back to baseline. So as we absorb the debate, see what those polls say, see what the coverage looks like in the next few days, but I keep that in mind as a possibility that if this is rough for Trump, are we looking up in a week and saying, well, the polls haven't changed that much? Now, the way of turning that around and saying, could it be different this time, would simply be, think back to 2016, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump's opponent, was an extremely familiar political commodity to people. She'd been on the center stage of American politics for a generation. Joe Biden had been the vice president when he's running a 2-term vice president in 2020. Here's Kamala Harris. We talked about this. More than a quarter of voters in that New York Times poll the other day said they needed to know more about her. So is there room for her, if, again, the post-debate polls break in her favor, if Trump's taking some here, is there room for her to capitalize in ways there weren't necessary for Clinton or even Biden? That's what I'm looking to see.
Kristen, I want to go to you here as we talk numbers. I don't want to be flip about this, but I also don't want to be like too above the thing that is going to be the pop culture moment coming out of tonight, which is, of course, Taylor Swift.
You know, I like to talk about
Listen,
pop
what
culture.
is her impact when she posted to Instagram for people to get involved, to register to vote? 35,000 registrations on vote.org after that. I mean, she's got a platform, she's got an audience, she's got a loyal audience who often listens to what she has to say. I don't want to, again, we're not too, like, you know, we're of the people here. We can talk about it.
But it's a really important point, because young voters were a
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Donald Trump is walking into the spin room here, which is a very interesting moment, very unusual. You know the adage, you see a candidate in spin when they feel like they need to be spinning. Let's listen in for just a second here. I think Garrett Hake is there. I'm not sure if his camera is plugged in and ready to go yet, but let's listen in this impromptu news conference.
It's just stunning.
So come right up here to this mic. Right up here to this mic. How about we do it this way? Ready? Did you lose that debate? Come on, guys. Walked into the spin room here. He's walking here. Mr. Trump, we're live on ABC News here, sir. Mr. Trump. I think it's at the top. Here we go.
We thought it was our best debate ever. It was my best debate ever, I think. And we had it was very interesting. It showed how weak they are, how pathetic they are, and what they're doing to destroy our country and the border with foreign trade, with everything. And I think it was the best debate I've ever personally that I've had. We're getting polls that show 92 to 6, 88 to 11. We're having a lot of great polls that just came out. They're polls, I guess, phone polls and lots of other polls, but you see the polls. A very important debate. Now, she wants to do another one because she got beaten tonight, but I don't know if we're going to do another one. The polls are indicating that we got 90%, 60%, 72%, 71%, and 89%. So the polls are very good, but beyond the polls, I felt very good. I had a good time doing it. I hate to speak about our country so negatively, but that's what happened. They've ruined our country. They've destroyed our country. So I hope you're all having a good time. But it was a very interesting evening. Yes.
Mr. President, if you're so confident you won tonight, why are you here? Why not let the performance speak for itself?
Well, I think it did, but people said, would I come here? And I made an obligation to a couple of people that I'm going to do their show. But it was I thought it was a great night.
Mr. President,
go ahead.
what are your reaction to Taylor Swift's endorsement of Kamala Harris?
I have no idea.
Mr. President,
when Republicans are complaining about moderators, does that mean that it wasn't a good night? Were you not prepared?
No, I thought the moderators were very unfair, but it basically was 3-on-1. But I thought they were very unfair, the moderators. Everybody did. But despite that, they're saying that the debate was a big deal.
Were you prepared for that, sir? Were you prepared for that kind of debate?
Yeah, I assume the moderators would be bad because that right there is the worst of all the news networks, in my opinion, and it always has been. Yeah.
Why will you commit to a second debate with Kamala Harris?
Well, she wants a second debate because she lost tonight very badly. So they immediately called for a second debate because they lost. So we'll, think about that. But she immediately called for a second. Look, we're looking at polls. We're looking at polls. The worst poll that we've had was 71 that I see, 71% to like 24 or 25. Well, we'll look at it, but they want a second debate because they lost. I mean, every poll shows they lost, and they lost. Now, with all of that, it was obviously 3-on-1, but I think we did great. Thank you. Who are you with? I love this guy, whoever he is. You said you did great. Yeah, Lebanon.
Listen, folks, if you can't tell by the hard-to-hear audio and those shaky camera angles, this was not an expected or planned appearance by former President Trump in that spin room in Philadelphia. He simply showed up. You heard him talk about that. He walked in front of where a number of reporters gathered, including our Garrett Haake. He's walking back over now, a little closer to the microphones, it seems. Let's listen back in for just a sec, see if that's any better.
The vice president, he's, the office of the vice president, and certainly, if you take a look at it, she was terrible with respect to the president. She's trying to get herself away from Biden, and she wasn't able to do that tonight. I think it was a big thing. They wanted to disassociate with Biden, and they weren't able to do it. What do you think of the president? Multiple times. What am I doing? Project 2025. Yeah, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. What do you think of the moderators? I think the moderators were very unfair. I actually thought they were just
the migrants.
No, but that's a true story.
President Trump,
I'm Yusef Salaam.
Want to be super transparent with you here. Tough to get our camera closer into this gaggle, into this scrum. Obviously, he travels with Secret Service, the former president. There's a bubble, a bit of a bubble, at least around him. He's walking around talking to people. Tom Llamas, while we're watching this, and I want to keep this up in case we get it better. And there's Andrea Mitchell. Let's listen in for a sec.
I don't even view it as a performance. Our country is in decline. We're a nation in decline. And I thought that we got that out. She was unable to defend it. She was certainly bad on foreign policy. She was very bad on the border. And the polls are showing that I have one poll is 92% to 6. And all of the polls are 60, 70, and 80 in our direction. So I thought it was a great debate from my standpoint.
Mr. President, what about black voters, Mr. President? What do you think black voters?
I love black voters. I love them, and they love me too. Oh yeah, it's true. You take a look at it. No, that's true. It's nonsense. Okay, well, you could check it out. Check with the authorities.
should vote with these claims about you?
I really don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I just say, all I do is say the truth. I say the truth. If I lose votes or gain votes, I don't care. But this was my best debate. I thought it was very good. I thought she was very weak on foreign policy. She was very weak on the border, and I'm very happy with it.
So former President Trump here holding court in the spin room there in Philly. Tom Llamas is there, and the former president repeatedly describing this as his best debate in his view, despite the fact that, of course, just a couple of months ago, it was the former president's opponent who dropped out of the presidential race altogether because of that debate. And there has been some news made here as former President Trump is declining to commit to a second debate. Tom, I think I have you, as we're taking a look here, former President Trump walking around spin. Give us a sense of the vibe. Where are you in relation to this? I saw Andrea there. I saw Garrett there. This note about the second debate. Kamala Harris's campaign dangled that it seemed as bait. Sure, we want him to do it. We're down to do it. He's declining to take it sounds like.
So, Hallie, I'm about 50 feet from where the former president just walked in. It's interesting. This debate might have been 90 minutes, and I think Donald Trump has turned it into like 100, maybe 110-minute debate, but it's all in favor of him those last 10, 15 minutes. We were watching to see where he goes. He says he's made some promises to get on some shows just beyond us are Fox News, and there's obviously other news organizations here. We're going to keep an eye out to see where he's headed. If he pops around here, we're ready to go. We have a microphone ready to talk to him. But he was there taking questions, and as you said, trying to spin the results of this debate. Republicans in a much different mood after this debate than they were in Atlanta. That has been clear from all the reporting we've done, all the conversations I have. I know you've had similar conversations as well. I'm sort of following the crowd and the noise. It sounds like former President Trump is somehow backstage right now. I can actually see through the curtains here. He is walking through backstage, essentially, where the organizers of the debate are hosting this. I think they're going to bring him in onto somewhere. We have no idea where. But in the meantime, Hallie, as we watch out for him, I'm gonna send it back to you. And if we get any updates, I'll let you know what happens.
I know I'll see you in that scrum in probably about 3 minutes from now. Tom, thank you very much. Chuck, let me go to you on this. Are you surprised that Donald Trump showed up after this debate at all? And are you surprised that he's declining to commit to a second debate? And I promise I'm not trying to ask leading questions.
Look, you uttered the rule. Right? When a candidate themselves goes into the spin room, they know they've had a bad night and they're trying to interrupt almost. I know the way Trump thinks on this. He knows he's getting roasted in all the post-debate, so he's trying to sort of interrupt that conversation, interrupt it on all the different networks to try to show some form of strength to his supporters. But this wasn't a good night, and I'm not surprised he hasn't committed to another debate. I don't think these debates aren't good for him. Steve made the point. He's never been seen as winning any of these debates, be him against Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden. He's not a likable person during these debates, and that comes through in public opinion. But guess what? He seems to survive these moments because he does have a strong base of support. I don't think he persuaded anybody new to his side. The question is did Kamala Harris persuade anybody to her side? I think she did a great job tonight making this debate about Donald Trump. But I also understand why Kamala Harris wants another debate. I don't think she did enough to explain to voters what she would do as president. I think their strategy was pretty clear. Do whatever you can to goad Trump and showcase his chaos and his crazy. Wow. And that's what she did. Yeah. And in that sense, she did a great job of that. It was all counterpunching, right, to borrow the Gavin Newsom boxer metaphors that he was doing. And it was constant. I mean, to the point he even took the inheritance bait that she threw at him, right? Like, made a little shot about the fact that he inherited his wealth, and he had to talk about that, right? Whatever she said about him,
Wharton Business School, Charlottesville, John McCain's you're crowded, these things that we know get under his skin.
My dog doesn't chase after that many squirrels, okay? That's how many squirrels he started chasing after.
Well, it's interesting. You told me 4 hours ago, you predicted that she would use the sort of phrase, "You're fired." You got fired by the American people. She sure did, right? And another sort of idea of way that she was baited. Stand by for 1 second. I want to sneak in one more question, but then I want to get to some voters who are standing by for us. And while they're getting ready, Steve and Kristen, quickly to you here. Steve, you heard the former president talk about sort of how polling has taken a turn for the better for him recently. While he seems to be citing polls that do not meet our NBC News standards, it is accurate to say that this race looks a lot like it did in July. Extremely close. The enthusiasm generated by Kamala Harris taking the top of the ticket for Democrats didn't magically turn into a 17-point lead in the polls. Far from it.
Yeah, and again, it's sort of that pattern we were talking about a few minutes ago, where when he takes a hit in these polls, we've seen this going back to 2016, things do tend to, sort of cycle back to baseline at some point, and that's roughly where it seems to be in the polling right now. I thought one of the interesting things here, just in terms of would the standing of the two candidates change, there was that New York Times Siena poll that asked, do you see the candidates as agents of change, or do you see them, really as the status quo? And it's an outright majority, 55%, who say that Kamala Harris represents more of the same. And one thing that was striking to me, I think it was clearly the Trump campaign's hope and their strategy preferred to going into this debate that Trump hammer the point that she's part of an administration right now that's not very popular. And it was 103 minutes into the debate, I noted, when he said that line, why hasn't she done it? And it kind of made me wonder if he had been repeating that all night, thinking about that to reinforce that perception that she's just the status quo.
Yeah, and she also, towards the end of the debate, gave her big line, which is that I represent the next generation.
I represent the case for change.
Turning the page. And to Chuck's point, you have to ask if she wants a second debate so that she can hammer that point over and over again and really lay out that case. What will that change look like? And again, I keep going back to this, Hallie. How would a Harris administration be different than a Biden administration if she does represent change? So it will be really fascinating to see whether the Trump campaign decides to actually move forward with this second debate. But again, Trump in the spin room, talking to Andrea, by the way. Andrea
and Garrett heard that first question
Garrett,
in. Yep.
Always getting to the front. Good for them. It just speaks to the fact that, yes, he clearly came off that stage and his allies, his advisors, knew he had been on defense all night
We
long.
can sit here and talk about it all day. Doesn't matter. What matters is what the voters say, right? And that's the most important thing, especially in the critical battleground of Pennsylvania. A great Commonwealth that I know well, and a great county that I know well, which is Bucks County. That's where we find Kate Snow, a place I grew up, Kate, and I know it's one of the swingiest counties in the Philadelphia suburb. I've been fascinated to listen to your conversation with these undecided voters here, given that, as we've been talking about, a small number of them, about 30% nationally, say this debate was going to matter as far as their decision-making process. Tell me everything you're hearing from them.
Oh, gosh, if I could tell you everything, Hallie, it would take me at least an hour. But I will tell you, we will try to synopsize for you. I've got 3 voters with me. If you saw me earlier tonight, you know that we're at the Churchville Inn. We're in Bucks County, right outside of Philadelphia. And I have with me Lynn Kelleher, who's a registered Republican, Hannah Reid, who's a registered Independent, and Andrew Wallace, who's a registered Democrat, all of whom came into the night saying, you're undecided. You don't know what to do. Even though you're all registered different parties, you're sort of equally undecided. I guess the big question is what changed for you tonight, if anything at all. It sounds to me like, so far, talking to you at length, not very much has changed. Fair? Fair. Not very much has changed. I want to ask the 2 women about abortion rights, because there was a moment in the debate, it came up, and I looked at you, and the 2 of you were leaning forward and looking emotional and very engaged. Hannah, you seemed angry at some of what you heard Donald Trump say about abortion rights.
Absolutely, because he was intentionally sensationalizing and giving false information, essentially disinformation.
You're talking about when he talked about how long states will allow abortions to happen?
Yes, absolutely. There is absolutely no woman who is 9 months pregnant that is walking into a doctor's office and asking for an abortion unless there is a medical unless it's out of medical necessity.
Is that an issue that motivates the 2 of you? Like, is that going to make you want to vote for perhaps Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris?
It's an important factor. There's just so many other things that concern me more that I can't say that that's my top. That's not my top.
Andrew, you said earlier you don't want to weigh in much on this because you feel like as a man it's not your place. But you did say that you wished that Harris had actually defined her views more.
She was asked by the moderators where she would
draw the line.
Draw the line on what week she would have allow an abortion, and she wouldn't answer the question. So I think once a child can live outside the womb, the line starts to turn to something else.
Did you all think, I think in our conversations off camera, you've been saying Harris had a pretty good night, Lynn, you thought?
I thought she had a very good night.
A lot of what she said resonated with you.
Yeah, I thought she was in command. I thought she countered what he had to say without getting too sucked in down the rabbit hole with him. I thought she had a good night.
And yet you told me you're still not 100% sure you would vote for her.
I'm not 100% sure I would vote for her. Do I wish that there was another candidate between these two? I do. I'm not happy with either candidate. That's why this is so hard for me.
And you were vocally, saying, "Oh, come on," when former President Trump would say some things tonight, like when he brought up immigration again and again.
Well, he just talks in extremes. Everything's, everybody knows this. He just talks in such extremes, and I don't believe a lot of what he says.
Andrew, we've been talking about this now for the last hour. You told me you're about 51% Trump, 49% Harris right now after the debate tonight.
Yeah.
Moved a tiny bit for you. Some of the things that former President Trump said tonight seemed, you were nodding along when he talked about the Afghanistan withdrawal, when he talked about crime linked to immigration, I believe, parts of that. And when he talked about paying for surgery for people who are transgender, that was something.
No, not paying for people who are transgender.
You don't.
Immigrants.
Okay, that was the part that you.
There was an ACLU survey that came out 2 days ago.
Was there anything in there that now leads you to think, well, maybe I will pull the lever for Donald Trump? Because you did vote for him in 2016. You all did.
I did.
Right?
I think Trump is trying to change his tactic. Trump is the best when he plays to his base, and I don't know if I don't like it, but when he is off the cusp, when he insults people, I mean, the big thing for him in 2016 was what he said to Hillary Clinton: "You'd be in jail." And he's trying to play it more mellow. I think he's trying to get the moderate vote, which I think is turning his base off. And I think that's why he did worse tonight, because I think he was more presidential than he was in any debate in the past.
And the moderates don't believe him.
And the moderates don't believe him, exactly.
That's you guys.
Yes. But I think Trump is trying to. You don't hear America first. You don't hear any talk about nationalism will be our credo, and that's what drove him to his election victory in 2016, not globalism. He doesn't talk about globalism. He doesn't talk about anything like that. I think Donald Trump is trying to become a mainstream, middle-of-the-road Republican, which is what Republicans don't, which is what his base doesn't want.
Tonight.
No, I think it's been the theme of his campaign.
Okay. Hannah, I want to go back to you. So you came into tonight saying you're sick and tired of the lack of bipartisanship, and you wanted to hear policies that could actually get done. Did you hear any?
So I took notes, and one of my notes says that, one thing that Kamala did was she attempted to address her policies to an extent with housing, abortion, climate change, and race. A lot of the time, Trump addressed Kamala. He wasn't talking about policies. He was calling her a liar. So that kind of turned me off a little bit. However, with Kamala's policies, some of them don't seem realistic, and she has a lot of questions she needs to answer before I can confidently say, this is my vote for you.
I was just going to say, you're still undecided as we sit here tonight. Thank you guys for staying up so late with us. Really appreciate it. Hallie, I'm not sure if you're having trouble hearing my microphone, or you hear me okay. Okay.
We're hearing you.
I'll
It's
send
all
it
good.
back to you.
We got you.
Okay. It's been fascinating.
Please give our deep thanks to those voters who watched that debate with you, who are sharing their insights here live on NBC News. Kate, thank you very much. I think we're heading back to Tom Llamas now in the spin room live in Philadelphia. Hey, Tom.
Hey, Hallie. Yeah, I want to let our viewers know we still have eyes on former President Trump, who we think this is the first time he's entered a spin room since 2016 when he was up first candidate for the first time in his life. He's doing an interview right now. We're going to have our cameras on him and the microphones. As soon as he wraps that, we're going to try to talk to him as well. For now, I want to bring in NBC News political analyst and former senator from Missouri, Claire McCaskill, and Jennifer Stefano. She's a Republican political strategist who knows this area very well. We thank you both for joining us here. Senator, I'm going to start with you. You hear those undecided voters, and they're still undecided after this debate. You've won a lot of elections. You know what it's like to campaign and try to win over those undecided voters. What do you think it's going to take in these last few weeks?
Well, first of all, those were 3 people. And it's very hard to make any conclusions with talking to 3 people. We'll find out over the next few days if her ability to control the stage tonight, her strength on the stage, the way she walked over and made him shake her hand, the way she reeled him in on crowd size and people leaving his rallies. I mean, every single thing she baited him on, he took it. I don't know how effective that's going to be, Tom, with the undecided voters. I know that she seemed presidential tonight, and for a lot of swing voters and undecided voters that didn't know her well, I think that's what they were looking for. Can she go toe-to-toe with Kim Jong-un? Well, she sure went toe-to-toe with Donald Trump tonight.
Jennifer, we were talking throughout the debate. You were sitting next to me. We were watching it together. There were times when you were frustrated. Why?
Well, I think the president did, in fact, take the bait when he shouldn't have, because hands down, he won this debate on policy. And he was able to answer the question that Vice President Harris would not. And that is whether or not people are better off than they were 4 years ago. And unfortunately, they're not. Okay, most Americans do not believe they are better off now. So I think, but what President Trump did by coming here into the spin room is to really overcome what I think a lot of his supporters are going to see as a bias on the part of ABC News. They fact-checked the former president numerous times. They never fact-checked the vice president, not once. And I think the president's here tonight to overcome that bias and speak directly to the American people.
But I'll say for that, and that is your opinion. That's fine. Right. I know a lot of Republicans have that opinion. But if you're the commander-in-chief, shouldn't you be able to take on 2 journalists or the moderators of the debate if that were the case?
And that's what he's doing tonight, right? I mean, who comes into the spin room like this? The former president does, because he is best when he speaks directly to the American people, whether he's going to come on here tonight or whether he's going to go on other stations. He wants to get his message directly to the American people. And I think he was excellent and substantive on policy when he talked about it. But, it was too much, some ad hominem attacks and personal attacks.
Yeah, we're gonna pause for a second. This is former President Trump right now, live in the spin room right now. I think he might be speaking to, it looks like, Senator Lindsey Graham from the back, maybe. I think I'm pretty right. Yeah, I can spot the back of Lindsey Graham's head.
Well done.
Former President Trump on the move now. Let me just see where he's going. Is he going behind the curtains again? All right, he's going backstage. Senator Claire McCaskill, why is former President Trump here? Why is he in the spin room?
Because he lost the debate. I think honestly, I think there's a little bit of panic. And me talking to people that are involved in the campaigns on both sides, the Harris campaign feels pretty good tonight. I've never seen a presidential candidate come in the spin room unless they lost the debate.
We're going to go get Garrett Haight live in the spin room just next to me by former President Trump. Garrett, what are you hearing? What can you see?
Tom, the former president just finished a hit on Sean Hannity's show here, appearing in the spin room. And I think, as the senator was saying correctly, I think he's here because he knows he did not perform as well as he wanted to. I mean, you just don't show up in here to make your case after the fact if you made your case on the debate stage. I asked Donald Trump exactly that question when he first came out of the room. I'm looking to see if he's going to come back out here behind me. He's pinned down against the wall here, essentially taking more questions. And he cited all these, perhaps non-existent poll numbers suggesting that he had won tonight and that he needed to make that point. And not only did he not commit to participating in another debate, he actively walked back his longstanding commitment to debate Kamala Harris and before her Joe Biden anytime, any place, anywhere. He had been on paper committed to 3 debates with sort of 1 remaining on the calendar, now saying he doesn't think it needs to happen. He doesn't necessarily want to do it after winning. He just said tonight he thinks the loser of this debate were Kamala Harris and ABC, clearly frustrated at the moderation and the format, which presented him with more fact-checking, I think, on some of his claims that he was expecting tonight. And Tom, I'll just say, since I know it's top of mind for a lot of people, he had no comment on that Taylor Swift endorsement, which I think was news to him when the question was asked.
All right, Garrett Haake with that update as we track the former president's movements throughout this spin room. If we see him again, we're definitely going to bring him live. A lot of action happening out here in the spin room and in Philadelphia, but we're going to go back to New York right now and Hallie.
Listen, we're going to talk about it all, Tom. Everything from Donald Trump to Taylor Swift. You get it all here on NBC News. Tom, thank you very much. We'll check back in with you as you keep an eye on the former president. Hogan Gidley is with us, somebody who knows Donald Trump well. Okay, we've seen candidates in spin rooms in primary debates. We've seen that at moments.
All the time.
Sure. And it is also, I think, just demonstrably, verifiably a thing that often happens. It happens when they don't do well, right?
I guess it could in some instances.
Okay, why do you think Donald Trump?
I just think it's always funny when members of the media always start a sentence with, you know, normally in politics, and then it's Donald Trump. Right. That's not the way he sees things. He sees a group of cameras, a group of journalists, and he says, you know what? I want to go right there. I want to go right in the middle of it. I'm sorry?
Why didn't you spin at the last debate?
Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. Okay. I mean, look, you can't just ascribe he thought he lost the debate. That's why he went in there.
I'm not ascribing.
I know that.
Asking you
I'm saying you, the royal you, the people out there, because that's not Donald Trump. You can't pigeonhole him like that. I bet what he did was he went back there, he talked to the folks, and they said, how do you think I did? He said, you did great. And she wouldn't answer any of these questions. Well, should I go tell them that? Sure, go hammer it some more. And so he just went out there to swing the axe a few more times.
If you were still advising him right now, would you tell him to do a second debate? With the caveat that he may or may not listen to you, but how would you advise?
That's always a good caveat. Look, I don't know, because it's interesting. Maybe I want to wait some time and see. He did say he would debate her anytime, anywhere. I think Chuck Todd made a really good point in the previous segment when he was saying, you know, Kamala wants another debate now because she doesn't know if she really brought it home for those independents out there. She really, was able to pull some of those folks onto her side. So she wants another bite at that apple because obviously her polling may show that she's down more than a lot of people think. She may be concerned. She may be worried because typically if you were Kamala Harris and you thought you really did wipe the floor with them, you'd want a mic drop moment. You'd say, you know what? Nope, that's it. The American people saw all they needed to see. So guess what? I'm out.
You don't think this is another instance of the Harris campaign baiting former President Trump as she did multiple times in this debate?
No, I don't. Okay. I think she wants to get up there again and have a conversation with the American people and Donald Trump.
Let's talk policy and substance for just a second here, because there were unanswered questions, and I'm asking you about former President Trump because you work for him and you know him and you were part of his campaign orbit. He didn't specify how he'd actually implement mass deportations. This is critical to his immigration policy. He did not specify his plan to replace Obamacare. He did not rule out vetoing a national abortion ban if that were to happen. And in fact, he threw his running mate to some degree under the bus, saying that J.D. Vance, he hadn't talked about it with J.D. Vance, who went on with Kristen Welker on Meet the Press and said that he would.
We also
is that something that he'll need to clean up and clarify?
No, I mean, 3 weeks ago, he said he wasn't going to overturn Obamacare. He said clearly on the stage tonight that he didn't think there was a need to talk about a hypothetical veto because he sent it back to the states. It's up to the American people to decide now, not courts. So he's been very clear on these issues. I find it interesting, though, that what happened on that stage was there were times, whether it be Project 2025 or trying to get rid of Social Security, she claimed those things. He has said on the record, on camera many times, that's not going to happen. But she just lets her policies change 180 degrees through surrogates, and she didn't have to answer for any of it.
She was asked about some of that, of course, tonight. We'll talk more about that. I know Tom's got a co-chair for the Harris-Walz campaign with him right now.
All right, Hallie, thank you for that. Yeah, with me now, co-chair for the Harris-Walz campaign and senior advisor to the DNC, Cedric Richmond, a former representative from the great state of Louisiana. Yep. Representative, thank you for being here. First, how are your people in Louisiana? How's New Orleans doing and everyone else with this hurricane fast approaching?
Well, everybody on the Gulf Coast, we're resilient, we're strong. This is a strong storm, but it's smaller than the really big one. So I expect that, we'll get some bruises, but we won't get knocked down, and we'll always get back up.
Talk to me about the vibe shift between Atlanta and that first debate and tonight right here in Philadelphia?
Well, I think tonight there was a clear contrast, and not just talking points, of somebody who's really stuck in the past. It just amazed me that Donald Trump is still infatuated with the 2020 election and that he won when he really lost by 7 million votes. And then you had
didn't the vice president essentially make the debate about Trump? I mean, he kind of was defending his record because that was the strategy.
Well, no, what she made it about the fact that he's stuck in the past and that she wants to chart a new way forward. And what I really was proud about with the vice president is that she took issues head on. She said, look, housing costs are too high, grocery costs are too high, healthcare costs are too high, and here's my plan. We're going to build 3 million houses with the private sector, and we're going to bring those costs down. We're going to continue to bring healthcare costs down, and we're going to bring groceries down, and here's how I'm going to do it.
You advise the campaign directly. You speak with the vice president. Will we see more unscripted moments? Will there be town halls, more sit-down interviews, maybe a news conference? Are we going to see that?
You're going to see a lot more from her. This is what I think that people didn't understand.
Yeah.
It was just 60 so days ago that she became the nominee, or when the president stepped down. So she had to spend time securing the votes. Then she had to pick what is your most important decision as a president, which is who's your running mate.
Right.
Then she had to put on a convention. And then we had the debate. And tonight I think the American people saw, one, who she was, two, where she came from, but most importantly, who she's fighting for, and that's them.
Real quick, do you think we get another debate? You think it happens?
I don't think Trump would ever debate again.
Okay.
Because you hear him now saying, oh, the umpires rigged the game. You know.
Cedric Richmond, we thank you so much for this. We appreciate you for being here for our special coverage. Hallie, we're going to wrap up our coverage now as we get to the top of the hour here. An incredible political night, right? Regardless of your political party. It was a fascinating debate. We learned a lot. It'll be interesting to see where the race goes from here.
Yeah.
I know you and I will be covering every single step of that race.
Well, let's talk about what's next. We've got that vice presidential debate set for October 1st. And later on this week, Tom, you will see these candidates, all of them, both tickets, barnstorming critical battleground states back in Pennsylvania and Michigan, in Wisconsin and beyond. These are the moments, especially as we look ahead to the start potentially of early voting, maybe as soon where you're sitting in less than a week from now, Tom. The race is on.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the momentum behind the Harris-Walz ticket right now, and how former President Trump, the experienced debater here, the experienced politician here, now after his third time running for president, how he tries to turn this race around, and what happens with the polls. We heard those undecided voters who said, we're still undecided, so we're going to have to wait and see. That's going to do it for our post-debate coverage tonight in Philadelphia. I'm Tom Llamas.
And in New York, I'm Hallie Jackson. On behalf of all of us here at NBC News, thank you so much for watching. We will have continuing coverage, of course, tomorrow morning. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.